any news in the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, came most of what I came across this week. I think came from the somebody sharing it in the community or something. But most of the information I have actually are some support tips and fixes and things like that from Microsoft. So the first thing that I have here is I did not come across this myself personally, but Brian Dam shared that beginning in August, after the August security update in Windows, folks were starting to see UAC prompts when running an MSI repair. It looks like there is a resolution to that now here in September. But I did want to point out something that Brian mentioned. If you do have apps that perform custom actions, you still will see a UAC prompt if you're running a repair. So if you have applications that you're deploying out there as MSIs and have the repair option available, this is probably something to pay attention to. So thank you, Brian. If you see this in the future, for sharing this, I appreciate it. Second thing I came across was getting shared pretty widely today. Microsoft is going to be adding some additional network endpoints that Intune is going to utilize. These are specifically Azure front door IP addresses to sort of help out with the security and firewall management through Intune. So these new IPs are going to be in place around December 2nd. So if your organization is writing firewall rules or ACLs around specific sets of IP addresses or something like that, recommend downloading the new ranges here and updating your firewall configuration accordingly. So I do appreciate that we get a few months notice on that one. I also saw that somebody shared this article, but I had not seen this article in the past. It looks like it might be new. And it's specifically some documentation around Active Directory domain join permissions for specific accounts, covering a couple of scenarios. The permissions for creating computer accounts, as well as reusing computer accounts during domain join scenarios, which those of us that are reimaging domain join devices often probably going to come into play. So some good documentation here on the specific permissions required. Again, I don't recall coming across this specific one myself, but definitely something that I am bookmarking. Some good stuff here. And last but not least, there is a support article that I'm going to get to in just a moment. But for those of you that have not run into it yet, you may in the future if you are using Intune and Entra. But Intune and Entra both have their own device limit restrictions. You can only join a certain amount of devices to Entra by default. That can be changed. And same with Intune. And those limits do change depending on the scenario that your devices were enrolled into those two platforms. Microsoft has some great documentation I like to refer to and share here, which also details which scenario counts against your users' Entra device limitations, as well as the Intune device limitations that you have in place. So, for example, automatic enrollment into Intune and Entra through group policy is not going to count against your device limits or your users' device limits, and we can see that here in this table. But we have other scenarios like autopilot, for example, that will it's not going to count against the Intune device limitation, but it will count against Entra. So it's important to understand those different scenarios that device limits are in play. Now, the reason that I bring that up is because Microsoft released an article yesterday around troubleshooting when you do or when a user reaches that device cap, because this can happen for different scenarios for each different operating system. So they've dropped this down into categories of Android and Android in Intune, enter a device limit on the Windows side, iOS limits. So basically, for each operating system here, Android, iOS, Mac OS, and Windows, how do we detect that that problem has happened to a user, as well as how do we troubleshoot and go about resolving it for the user? Very useful article here. It talks about the different event IDs that you'll see and troubleshooting that you'll need to do to get that resolved. Fortunately, a lot of the times it is pretty clear. Device cap reached. That's definitely a helpful, useful error code, not the 8004005 error code that we might not want to get some other times. But very useful troubleshooting article here, posted yesterday. So that was what I had today.
All right then. I had a couple of things. Let me see if I can share my screen here.
All right.
Bum, 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 bum. Too many buttons. All right. Like that. And I can get rid of that one. All right. So this is not what I want to share. There was a little troubleshooting exercise I had just here before the call. I totally forgot how to check which target editions you can upgrade a server to one edition to another. So I looked that up, but that was a sidebar.
I thought you just had all the dism commands memorized 100% by now.
No.
No, it's a useful tip. I appreciated that you brought it up here before we were chatting because I had not come across that either. So at least thank you for sharing.
Of course. Anywho, John Saville, he did a video around this part. So I don't know exactly what date this one was published, but the video came up just a couple of weeks back here. I added it to show it in the last office hours, but as the elderly geek I am, I forgot. So I'm doing it now, fair and square. So this one is available, and I'm also going to share the video from John that kind of goes through a little bit what it's all about, because it's one of those technologies that are useful to have as a background or like back to basics information for pretty much anyone that works in IT these days, not just security folks. So highly recommend this one. Then I stumbled across a blog post from Jürgen. I don't believe you shared that one. But this one here regarding drivers disguising themselves as software installation. So basically we have a driver that calls a co-installer. So that was a pretty good read, I thought. So I wanted to share that one as well, because they can be difficult to block and difficult to detect for elevation or for other purposes if you're interested. So I thought it was a good post. So I wanted to share that one. Let's see. Oh yeah, last week we shared this information that down the road Microsoft will allow you to pinpoint what updates that you want to have in Intune, and also some rollout options that we don't know what they are just yet, but I'm still hoping for maintenance windows, but I haven't had my hopes too high up on that one. But what I didn't show last week was that this platform is indeed using the Microsoft roadmap site behind the scenes, and that one turned out to be quite useful. So if you go here and, for example, pick Microsoft Intune as a product, to no one's surprise, it gets filtered and see what's upcoming in this platform and when the expected rollout is, if there anything planned, or it could be in development or whatever it might be. So for example, here, this is why I found that little snippet around changes to quality updates and when they are planned to be available for preview and they're planned to roll out. So this site in combination with like what's in development for Intune, what's new in Intune, those websites, I find it's quite useful to let's see what's going on. I don't think I don't need to see this one anymore. There is an API you can subscribe to apparently in the backend also. Let's see. You did share the one of Active Directory join permissions. I had that one bookmarked as well. And then for those of you running Config Manager out there, you are probably going to be happy about a revised security update for Config Manager. We have highlighted a couple of times the SQL Server injection code vulnerability in Config Manager that is described as part of that CVE. That earlier required you to upgrade to 2503 and upgrade to 2503 pretty quickly. Now they have released that even for older versions of Config Manager. So if you're on 2403 or 2409, there is now a new KB available for that. Now, I would probably recommend to go up to this version as well, 2503, because there were so many bug fixes done in that release. But at least now you don't have to like rush it in over the weekend and get it done. Now you can just apply one of these hot fixes instead. So I want to mention that. Thank you, Prywell, for sharing that information. Much appreciated. All right. So that was all I had in terms of updates.